Hello, I hope you're all well. So welcome to another channeled stories message, world message. Definitely some world predictions in this. I've just done the reading for it over on my channeled stories channel. So if you want the reading that accompanies this and what the message is from the divine, it's a divine channeled message. I've been getting this through my stories for years now. Please go to that channel, subscribe, check it out. Consider if you want to read the books, you can check them out on Inka as well. And I would love you to follow me on there. Details in the description. Now, I did a reading, the second reading for this is on the Spooked Out channel, at Spooked Out 153, because there was a big reading about something in my personal life that came through in the story about the spirits I see and things like that. So if you want to check that out. But this is the reading following on from that, as I say, the reading that comes after, the tarot reading that comes after it, the channel, extra channeled messages. That's on the channeled stories one. So you can check that out. But I would love you to listen to the next bit. And as I say, check it out on Inka, because there are definite messages. We've got divine feminine, divine masculine. We've got about the collective as a whole and what's coming forward for us, what they're trying to bring forward for us, and how we have been blocked from that. Okay, so that's discuss that more in the channeled reading afterwards on channeled stories. So please, I'd love you to support my work as an author. It's so important for me, and it's another way of just getting channeled messages. I work with a team in the spirit team to do these stories, and I've had so many strange experiences doing them. So thank you very much for watching and supporting. Take care, and I shall see you next time. Enjoy the reading. Thanks, bye. Okay, next bit of Knight of Swords. I restlessly debated whether or not I should rouse the police. Maybe they already knew of the murder I had seen in my dream last night. I doubted whether they would believe me and not suspect my involvement. That hook-nosed inspector had hinted as much when he interviewed me about my relationship with a previous victim, the 40-year-old heiress, Lady Wilde. No, I couldn't go to them. If they put me behind bars, I would not be able to trace Juliet to save her life. Juliet must come first. My decision was made. Anxiety for Juliet kept me awake, but eventually exhaustion, sorry, it's my throat, must have taken its toll, and I fell asleep again. I could not remember having done so, but I awakened suddenly. I covered my eyes and groaned at my valet, Baxter, as he opened the drapes, allowing the vicious, bright October sunlight to flood into my room on Halloween. Baxter ignored me, just as he always did. He laid my breakfast tray over my lap whilst I sat up in bed. Juliet entered my thoughts immediately. For one moment, just as I always did, I wondered if the events of last night had all been a dream. I suppose it was some sort of delusionary way of trying to convince myself that none of this was happening and all was safe in my world. But there was always evidence in the evening newspapers of the previous night's events, and I knew there would be again that evening. Breakfast was the last thing I wanted, though it was a hearty one. 2 eggs, bacon, bread and butter, my usual fare. I had no appetite for it, but the coffee with its strong bitter taste and pungent rousing odour was more than welcome. Sleeping alone again, my lord? Baxter mocked sarcastically. I eyed him with an equal measure of mock contempt as he handed me the Times. I seldom read newspapers except the evening ones now to confirm the murders I witnessed the night before. They usually bored me with their dark, tiresome headlines depicting strife and misery in the world. But Baxter still brought the Times every morning with my breakfast. I believe he thought it his duty to reform my frivolous life and encourage me to widen my narrow view of the world, perhaps even care a little more for the poor souls in it. However, I had been taking more note of late since the murders began, consuming my waking thoughts and dominating every front page as they did again that morning. The lead column was still discussing the previous murder of Lady Wilde. It depicted a London that quaked with fear under the spell of a vampire killer. A great amount of discussion had been expended on the gruesome details of the murders and the theory that the killer was indeed a supernatural being. They had also given several suggestions as to who his next victim might be. I felt a stab in my heart when I saw another of my female friends, Lady Thompson's name, upon the list. Fear renewed its strength within me. I had to find Julia and somehow put a stop to these murders. Baxter returned, his pallor deathly white. His grey whiskers were upright and bristling with agitation. Your lordship, you must come quickly. Lord Legate has collapsed. I am afraid his illness has taken a turn for the worse. The doctor has been sent for. Lord Legate insists he must see you. I stared at Baxter, the man I called my uncle, the man who had taken me into his home after the death of my parents was now dying. I had known it would be soon, but I had banished the morbid thought from my mind. Lord Legate was, Lord Legate was a decorated officer from the Crimean War, a fighter who would live forever. I did not believe he could succumb to the same premature death my mother and father had endured. My thoughts were those of a child, perhaps selfish. I would have no family when Lord Legate died. I could not bear the pain of loneliness. I dressed quickly, making every effort to ensure that my attire was immaculate and formal, worthy of my uncle's reception. My uncle hated sloppy, uneducated dressing and demanded attention to the finest detail in appearance. I was not about to let him down now. Lord Legate had also lost his family at a young age, and his wife had died of tuberculosis not 6 years ago. I was the only close surrogate kin he had left. With the assistance of my valet, I dressed in a dark grey paisley silk vest with a black satin back. I seldom wore vests of bright colours. I did not care for bold reds, greens or otherwise, finding them garish. On occasions such as for some festivity, my valet could persuade me to wear a cream or light blue one, but this morning was no such occasion. My necktie was also black silk, and I wore it thinly tied, complementing the formal high collar of my shirt. My latest clothing purchased from my Savile Row tailor, a new double-breasted black frock coat, finished my outfit. You might say my attire was fit for attendance at a funeral and a little formal, but I wished to show my uncle respect. I checked my appearance in the mirror, running my fingers through my dark chestnut hair that sat full and neat to the nape of my neck. My face looked pleasingly smooth from shaving. Just like Lord Legate, I would not tolerate an untidy complexion unless there was cause for it. I felt a slight tremble in my body as I approached my uncle's door. I did not wish to lose him. It was with heavy heart that I entered the room. The drapes were closed, blocking out the sunlight and creating a dreary, sombre feel to the room, as though the air of impending death was not enough of an oppression. My uncle's lawyer stood by the bed next to his faithful servants. Two old friends, Lord and Lady Briggs, who had been visiting him that morning when he collapsed, were also present. My uncle hoarsely called for me. I dutifully approached the bed as Lady Briggs began to cry. His face was thin and tinged with greyness as he lay in bed, whilst Maud, our housekeeper, administered a drink of brandy to his lips. His expression was weary, just like the rest of his ailing body. He was nothing of the robust, large-figured man he had once been. Tears painfully stung the backs of my eyes, but I held them at bay, careful not to show my weakness. He bade me to sit next to him on the bed, and I obeyed without question. He reached for my hand, grasping onto it. Nathan, my boy, I need you to do something. I haven't got long. He could hardly summon the breath to speak to me. I leaned in closer to hear his whispered voice. Anything, uncle. I am completely at your command, as I have always been. I need you to bring her here. I need you to care for her, Nathan. Who, sir? Who do you wish me to bring? I promised him. I said I would care for her. He saved my life in the war. Lord Legate took a shallow broken breath before being consumed by a coughing fit. I squeezed his hand and waited patiently for him to compose himself. Bring the girl here to live with you. He weakly patted my hand. I want you to be her guardian in my place. It's time for you to take responsibility. She needs you. Another coughing fit overtook him before he was able to speak again in a hoarse whisper. They are hurting her. Nathan, promise you will go to her. Promise. I promise, uncle, I promise. Please don't agitate yourself. I wanted more information, but he was out of breath. Mr. Thomas Payne, Lord Legate's lawyer, addressed me. As you know, Lord Cameron died 2 weeks ago unexpectedly at the Huntley Ball. I believe you were there. He appointed your uncle as guardian and protector of his sister's child, Constance. She is to inherit the bulk of Lord Cameron's fortune and shipping business above his own 2 sons and daughter. Lord Legate is to hold her inheritance in trust until Constance attains the age of 21. She is at present to turn 18 in 2 weeks' time. Should he die, he has the authority to appoint another guardian. His lordship has chosen you. I stared at him in disbelief. Payne finished his short speech by pushing his horn-rimmed spectacles up his pointed nose. A sense of wry disbelief echoed in his tone, making me frown in his direction. The man reminded me of a ferret with his beady black eyes and small stature. He clearly disapproved of my uncle's choice of new guardian. I couldn't blame him. Even in my own eyes, I was unsuitable. I had never before taken any responsibility in my decadent, self-serving life, and by now I did not believe myself of ever having the stomach for it. I started to make my doubts known to my uncle. Uncle, I have never met the lady, and Uncle, I have met the lady, and I wish to do all I can to help her, but not as a guardian. It was not how I had envisaged my connection with Julia at the beginning. I was not exactly the type of reliable guardian he was looking for. I am flattered, but Nathan, it is time for you to take responsibility. Constance will be the saving of you, and she is hardly a child. Your rule will soon be more of a protector. He started to cough. Once more, he seemed to find it incredibly difficult to breathe. Lord Cameron's wife resents Constance. She does not love her. The family are angry Constance has inherited, and they are ill-using her. I won't allow it. Payne spoke up again, elaborating on Lord Legate's concern. The eldest son has engaged lawyers to contest the will, and he has made Constance a prisoner in the home. I believe he, aided by his brother and sister, is denying Constance food and abusing her. The last time I went to check on her on behalf of Lord Legate, I was run off the premises. The eldest son is a violent man and rules the house with a rod of iron. Your uncle had initially thought it prudent to leave Constance at the Cameron family seat in Hertfordshire because of the recent murders of society women in London. However, when I informed him of the state in which I had found his ward, he resolved to act. We arranged to go and retrieve Constance this very day and bring her home to live at Lord Legate's residence. I had not known that my uncle had been made a guardian or about his plans, but then I hadn't asked. Juliet would be safe with me. Recently, I was seldom around to make conversation with Lord Legate. I felt regret and remorse that time was nearly up for such niceties I had taken for granted. I wanted him to know Juliet and see the strong nature, feistiness and bravery I admired in her. I need you to go, Nathan, before they starve her to death. If she dies, the eldest son will inherit. He will squander the money on vice. He will get away with murder. Murder, the word conjured up fleeting memories of my terrible dreams. My uncle had indeed been wise to insist his ward resided in the countryside. I couldn't believe that the means to finding Juliet had been under my very nose all this time. London was a dangerous place for Juliet, as I knew only too well. However, it seemed her current situation was just as perilous. I will, Uncle, but I don't want to leave you just yet. I was worried he would die before I returned, and I was torn. His voice unexpectedly rose very sharply with strength, making me jump to silence. Nathan, do not disobey me. I nodded gravely and slowly stood, accepting my duty. Of course, sir. Forgive me, please. I will go at once. I leaned forward and bent to kiss his forehead. I will bring the lady to you, and I promise I will take care of her. She is more than worthy of being your ward. I gave him a plea from my heart. Please, Uncle, wait for me. He nodded, but a great coughing fit overwhelmed him, preventing further discourse. I glanced quickly at Mr. Payne and gestured for him to follow me from the room. Baxter, as quick as ever, had gone on ahead of me, instructing one of the maids to retrieve my hat and sending the footman for my uncle's carriage. Ooh. Right, okay. For some reason it's not working to do with the chapters, so I'm just going to go in here. I didn't even know to where we were headed. Thankfully, as we made our way outside, Payne provided me with all the details of the arrangements of our journey by train from Euston Station into Hertfordshire. The sun was vainly attempting to burn off residual morning mist that hung low to the frozen ground between bare autumn trees when we disembarked the train at Berkhamsted. The sky was greying with clouds that threatened to vanquish the attempt and deliver snow in its place. A waiting carriage raced us through the heart of the Ashridge estate and out towards Elid Hall. Dead brown leaves glistened with frost on the muddy floor of the surrounding woodland. The wheel ruts on the narrow winding road were filled with ice, making our short journey a slippery, hazardous affair. I glanced out as we emerged from the wood and approached the hall from the west side. Elid Hall was a vast, oversized, grandiose building. It was not unlike my own family home, Keeley Park. I rarely visited home. To do so only caused me heartache. I was the only member of my family left, and it brought back memories of happier times in my childhood with my parents that I could never relive. I could hide from my sadness in London more than adequately. An endless string of social engagements, parties, and other leisure pursuits had kept me entertained since leaving university. I had no need to work, but I confess I rather wished I did. My social life was becoming boring. There was no substance or meaning to my playful, frivolous life. I longed for something more, but what that something should be, I could not have told you until Juliet arrived in my life. The carriage turned up a long drive that ran through an opening in the high wall surrounding the castle-shaped home. The structure appeared dark and foreboding, even in the daylight. Its asylum-like appearance filled me with unease. As we approached, I felt Juliet's presence. I was eager for some air and made sure I was the first to step out from the carriage when it came to a stop outside the main portico. The moment I stepped onto the gravel path, I felt Juliet's consciousness wrap around my own. Her intoxicating scent lingered around me. Her presence was so strong. Confused, I whirled around, searching her out, expecting to find her standing behind me. I felt elated, comforted that she was close. I could not wait to see her. Instinctively, I reached out with my mind, calling her name. It felt unusual to attempt contact with another in such a fashion, and yet natural, and I did it without thinking. But I was met with silence, distrust, and fear. I refused to allow it to deter my persistence. My stubbornness proved to be an advantage, for finally she answered me. "Go home, it isn't safe for you here." I smiled to myself as I searched her mind, attempting to find out where she was, marveling at how I found it so easy a task. I made no attempt to hide my thoughts, especially my resolve to take her from the house. "No, you must leave," she answered. "They will not let you take me, and I do not wish to see you hurt. Go, please. Wait, you are to be my guardian? This can't be. I do not need one. I am soon to be 18. You don't know what you are getting into. Please go, I beg you." "I have no intention of going anywhere," I told her firmly, looking up at the windows, trying to work out in which room she was being held. I tried to inquire as to her location, but she shrank back, hiding the answer from me. Once more, she begged me to leave before I was hurt. Before I could continue our silent conversation, the housekeeper came bustling out of the house. Juliet retreated from my mind. The feeling of loss was immediate and strangely almost painful. I quickly composed myself after feeling a frown settle across my brow and peered at the housekeeper. She was a fearfully haughty-looking old woman. I gave her a courteous but sharp greeting. I had been fully briefed on what to expect from all members of the household, high and low, and wished to quickly convey that I would not tolerate any evasive behaviour. Excuse me. Especially now I knew my ward was Juliet. Good morning. I wish to see Lady Juliet Gaudain." The woman frowned. "I'm sorry, sir, but Lady Gaudain is not at home today. If you leave your card." "Nonsense, I know she's here. I am her new guardian, and I insist that she is brought to me now." I made my way past the woman as she fluttered around me, trying to prevent admittance into the house. "Please, I've been given strict orders not to." I removed my hat and gloves and handed them to the footman who had appeared. I folded my hands behind my back. It was a habit when I wished to make a stern point. I had learnt it from Lord Legate as a child. "I suggest you bring the master of the house whilst you are fetching Juliet. I wish to speak to him as well," I informed her, adopting a superior tone. "And what name should I give him, sir?" the housekeeper asked rudely. Lord Nathan Valancourt, I am here on behalf of Lord Legate. Be quick, I detest being kept waiting. I am a man of little patience. Very good, sir, she gestured at the footman. Michael, take Lord Valancourt and Mr. Payne into the drawing room. The footman gave her a nod and led us across the wide checkered floor of the reception hall towards the drawing room. I couldn't help but glance up the long staircase, wondering once again which room Juliet was locked in. If they refused to bring her to me, I would go and search for her myself. As we entered the drawing room, I again called out softly to Juliet in my mind. Once more, I received no response. Loud, heavy footsteps diverted my attention. Someone was approaching the room. A raised male voice berated the housekeeper, who appeared to be following close from behind the voice's owner. I turned to face the door and stiffened my composure, ready to deal with the abusive man who was about to enter. Mr. Payne was clearly anxious, having borne the brunt of the new Lord Cameron's anger on his last visit. He stood like a coward behind me. I folded my hands behind my back, eagerly awaiting the tyrant's entrance. The two oak doors to the room were flung open in a flamboyant display of rage from the master of the house, Lord William Cameron. I could not help but raise my eyebrows with some amusement, and fought to suppress the smile that twitched wickedly at my mouth. The man was perhaps master of the house, but clearly not of his emotions. In my mind, I heard an agitated gasp of fear from Juliet. Its loudness startled my senses. She spoke to me. Be careful. He means to do you harm if you do not leave. Please go. I will not have anyone hurt on my behalf. He has shown violence to those who have tried to help me. I will face my fate alone, sir. I felt impatience gnaw me sharply as William Cameron stalked across the room. I told her firmly, Juliet, I will not leave you in this house. Do not concern yourself with my safety. I can look after myself. William Cameron was an unpleasant brute of a man. He had a swollen, ruddy complexion and a nose that spoke of too many nights spent heavily consuming liquor at leisure, something I noted at Lady Huntley's ball. He appeared much older than his 26 years as a result of it. It is you from the ball. What is the meaning of this intrusion, sir? The fellow bellowed at me. I am Lady Gordane's new guardian, nominated by Lord Legate on his deathbed. I intend to take her to London. Please have her brought to me. That young woman is not leaving this house. I am master here. I do not acknowledge my father's will, sir. My lawyers are contesting it. As far as I am concerned, my cousin is staying here. I beg to differ, sir. I am not leaving this house without her. How dare you, sir? William Cameron moved towards me once more until he stood very close to my face. The smell of stale whiskey invaded and assaulted my nostrils. No doubt it was liquor that infused his volatile temper. Despite his reputation, I was unafraid. I had fought and won against more threatening-looking men than Lord Cameron when I had frequented the gin shops of London. But I do dare, sir. I have been informed that you are starving and beating my ward, holding her prisoner so you can control her inheritance. I will not stand for it. Bring her to me at once, or I will search every room in this house until I find her. Try, sir, and I will knock you down where you stand. I smiled. Well, the man was rather amusing with his inflated ego and sense of personal power. If you wish to fight, Lord Cameron, I would be more than gracious enough to indulge you. I box, sir, do you? Compared to my own tall, slim but muscled stature, William Cameron was a stout man with a heavy swagger. He would have made a formidable opponent, but one I could have handled. I was a good amateur boxer, having won several trophies at school and university. I was ready for anything the bully was able to throw at me. I unfolded my hands as a precaution, but remained in my stubborn stance, undeterred by his vulgar closeness. Damn you and your impudence, Cameron blustered. He raised the back of his hand to strike it down upon my face. I seized my chance, executing a perfect blow to his jaw, and then another to his solar plexus, when he came back at me in a rage. He fell to the floor, clutching his body. The wind knocked from him. I stepped over his prostrate form, quickly making my way out of the room, determined to search the house and waste no further time with William. Pain followed closely at my heels like a faithful dog. I called to Juliet in my mind once more, but she was silent. I felt her distress like a sharp pain in my temple as I mounted the stairs. As the distance between us closed, our connection became stronger until I could view everything that Juliet saw in front of her. Someone was hurting her, a woman and a man pulling her hair, dragging her from the small room in the attic where she had been confined. They were under the direction of an older woman, who I presumed to be my ward's aunt. I could even feel Juliet's pain coursing through me, spurring me onto her assistance. She was fighting back bravely, but her body was weak through lack of food and sleep. Her actions were in vain. She was close to fainting. It seemed as though a lifetime passed before I reached the attic rooms on the 3rd floor. I was horrified to find the reality of what Juliet had shown me in her mind. She had fallen to her knees with exhaustion from her struggles. A man, I presumed to be Edward Cameron, was dragging her along the floor by her long Titian hair. The scene reminded me of the clergyman. I felt anger rise and swell like a tidal wave inside me when I beheld Juliet's beautiful bruised face. I'd never felt the surging force of such anger before. I flew at the man, using my strength to pull him away. Succeeding, I slammed Edward against the wall, struggling with him as he tried to strike me. There was a distinct lack of help from Mr. Payne. Edward took aim and managed to push his fist past my defences, making heavy contact with the side of my face. I staggered back, forced to lose my grip of him. The two women had taken hold of Juliet. As I made my recovery to lunge at Edward once more, I heard Juliet shout loudly in my mind, "William is coming to help his brother. I'm afraid for you. I will help all I can." Okay, I just want to read this next little bit. I didn't even know to where we were headed. Oh, what's happened there? I'm on the wrong one. I did not have time to rebuke her. What did she think she could do? I wanted to stop the women pulling her along the passageway, knowing from Juliet's thoughts they intended to remove her from the house to some secret location. I could not permit it. My fear for her life was acute if William got hold of her. My fight with Edward took us to the floor. By a quick twist of fate, he had placed his hand at my throat. He was determined in his strength to crush my windpipe, and I felt myself begin to choke. I heard Juliet cry out loud with a fierce anger. Suddenly, the intense pressure on my larynx was lifted. I looked up at Edward, confused. He was staring at his hand poised in midair just above me. It shook with the effort he made to move it, but he was unsuccessful. He stared at it fearfully a moment longer before angrily turning his head to the women. "This is the witch's doing," he snapped, his brown eyes burning with intense disgust at Juliet. I was quick to take advantage of his distraction and jumped to my feet. Juliet stood between the two women, who held her arms in a vice-like grip as they stared in horror at Edward. Juliet's haunted eyes were fixed on his hand. She was somehow using her mental strength to hold it there. I could feel she was weak, and it was taking tremendous effort. I was astounded by the mental power she possessed. William appeared on the landing. He stood aghast, a horsewhip in his hand. Juliet's eyes widened with fear. His presence prompted into action. She flicked her eyes ever so slightly towards the wall, and I could hardly believe what I saw with my own. Edward flew against the wall, apparently pinned there by some invisible force. The whole scene provoked William to raise his whip to strike her with it. I sprang towards him, catching his arm. Juliet struggled with the two women as I pushed William backwards. I wondered if I had the same advantage of power as Juliet. For one mad moment, it seemed logical that I would. I had sensed we were kindred spirits. William was struggling ferociously, making it hard to hold him. I focused my eyes on him and felt a surge of energy erupt within my body. In my mind, I simply instructed William to retreat and to drop the whip. He fell back hard against the wall, the whip falling from his hand. My wish appeared to be my command. Violent abuse tripped from William's mouth. I turned to free Juliet from the women, but they had already let go and were backing away, a picture of horrified fear worn on their faces. Without a moment of further hesitation, I caught Juliet's hand and pulled her close to me. I felt intense relief the moment I made physical contact with her, as though a part of me had been missing since birth, and now I was whole. I got a light on whole there. I did not understand it was unlike any warmth or fleeting love I had felt for any other woman. The intensity was overwhelming. Realising the urgency with which I must get Juliet out of the house and away to a place of safety, I began to lead her quickly down the stairs. The family was shouting at us, but I gave them none of my attention. As we descended, I felt Juliet lean against me for support. She was exhausted. She whispered urgently to me, "I can't hold him any more. My strength is weakening. I'm sorry, but Edward is free." I glanced back. Edward was pursuing us at speed. I hastened, dragging Juliet with me, hoping the carriage was still outside. But at the bottom of the staircase, the housekeeper was rushing up towards us with 2 stable hands. One of them was armed with a pitchfork. We stopped dead. We were trapped. Okay, hope you enjoyed it.